Hello students, this is Ms. Medina, and in this video we're going to be calculating rate of change when they give you a function. All right, so in this one it says given this function that f of x equals negative x squared minus 9x plus 28, determine the average rate of change of the function over this interval. So we know the first x is negative 7, and we know the second x is negative 1. All right, so just like before, you're going to need 2 points, point number 1 and point number 2. Each of these points is going to have an x and a y. We know we're starting at negative 7. Okay, so this first x is negative 7, and we're ending at x equals negative 1. Okay. So remember, since this is point 1, this is x1, y1. And since this is point 2, this one is x2, y2. Notice how our y's are missing, right? And yes, this means that we need to evaluate. Evaluate the function. We need to find f of negative 7. And we also need to find f of negative 1. All right, so everywhere we see an x, we're going to have to plug in a negative 7. All right, so it starts off with a negative sign, and then it says x squared, right? So that's where the negative 7 is going to go. And then it says minus 9x, so minus 9 times negative 7 plus 28. So let me try this again. I gotta delete this because I'm not one for editing the videos. So here we go. Since this is the first one that we're doing, I'm gonna write the equation. My bad. All right, so let's say you have f of x, right? And it's negative x squared minus 9x plus 28. Everywhere we see an x, we're going to put in that negative 7. Parentheses. Right? So f of negative 7 is going to be equal to negative 7 squared minus 9 times negative 7 plus 28. All right, and that's exactly how we're going to type it in. Now, when I say type it in, I mean we're only going to be typing in this. Okay, you don't type in the f of negative 7 into the calculator. So watch and learn. You can type in negative parentheses, negative 7, close the parentheses, square, okay, right here, right? Just click on this keyboard right here. It'll open up and there's your a squared. Minus 9 parentheses, negative 7, close the parentheses, plus 28. And voila, the answer is 42. So this means that when x is negative 7, your output or your y is 42. So negative 7 is mapped to 42. There you go. Ta-da! Clear? All right, so we're going to do the same thing for x equals negative 1. All right, so we'll start again from the beginning. This will be the only one that I'll do this, so you can watch this one over to watch me explain it again, okay? All right, so this is the function that they gave us, and we want to evaluate it when x equals negative 1. So f of negative 1 is going to be equal to, everywhere we see the x, we're going to plug in negative 1 this time, okay? Here's an x, and there's an x. So it's going to be negative 1 squared minus 9, negative 1 plus 28. All right. Oh, and you can actually just go back on this one and just click here, change it to a 1, and click here and change it to a 1. See? Voila, 36. So f of negative 1 is equal to 36. Or, in other words, when x equals -1, the y value is going to be 36. And now we have both points, and we just need to do our rate of change calculation. All right, so the rate of change is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? y2 minus y1. All right, so y2 is right here, and that's y1. And remember, there's going to be a subtraction sign between them. So 36 minus 42. And for your x's, it's going to be -1 minus a -7. Okay, see? -1 minus a -7. So -1 minus a -7. And we're going to type it in just the way we see it on the calculator, because Desmos is cool. So 36 minus 42 over -1 minus -7. So it's a -1. So the rate of change is equal to -1. So it's decreasing in that interval. Okay. Please rewatch how to enter the number. This is why we worked so hard to make sure that you were able to evaluate correctly. Okay. Let's do this. Given this function, determine the average rate of change over the interval from 3 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 10. All right, so we're going to have 2 points. Okay? Point number 1 is going to have an x of 3, but we don't know the y. And point number 2 is going to have an x of 10, but we don't know the y. Okay? Since this comes from point 1, this is going to be our x1 and our y1. Since these come from point 2, this is going to be our x2 and our y2. Okay. Now, how do we find them? We're going to use the function g of x. All right. So this is our calculations on the side. Clear? So we know that g of x is equal to x squared minus 8x plus 12. All right. Everywhere you see the x, we're going to plug in +3. So we want to find g of 3. So we'll put this in parentheses, squared minus 8. Ooh, that's a square. 8 times 3 plus 12. All right, it's in the calculator. And I like that you can see exactly what I'm typing in. All right, so that's -3. So +3 is mapped to -3. Okay. Now you have to do the same thing for g of 10. Okay. So everywhere we see the x, we have to plug in a 10 now. So this will be 10 squared minus 8 times 10 plus 12. Okay, so once again, we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're just going to get rid of the previous input, and we're going to put the new input as well as over here. That gives us 32. All right, so when x equals 10, y is 32. All right, so now that we have the numbers, we just need to do our formula. All right, so rate of change is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me move this stuff down. Okay. Equals. All right, so I need y2 minus y1. So this is y2 minus y1. So 32 minus a -3. And for my x's is going to be 10 minus 3. Okay. Using decimals, I get 32 minus a negative 3 over 10 minus 3. So that gives me a rate of change of 5, which means it's increasing. It's a positive increase. All right, let's try it again. I like these because they have that negative sign at the beginning, and students tend to make a mistake right here. All right, so in this problem, once again, it says that we're given this function that g of x is equal to negative x squared plus 4x plus 12. And we need to determine the average rate of change of this function over the interval from 0 to 5. Okay? So our point number 1 is going to have an x of 0, and our point number 2 is going to have an x of 5. We don't know the y's, but we're going to use the functions to find them. And so wherever we see the x's, that's where we're going to substitute in our values, okay? So first we're going to find g of 0. All right, so wherever we see the x, we're going to substitute in 0. Make sure that you're diligent about those parentheses in these situations. Right, and then we're going to use the calculator. Oh, I lost it. Here we go. Let's see. Negative parentheses 0 squared plus 4 times 0. And yes, we know that they're going to be 0 and 0, right? Plus 12. So this should be just 12. All right, so 0 is paired to 12. Right. Now we need to find g of 5. Same deal, wherever we see the x, we're going to substitute in a 5. This is negative 5 squared plus 4 times 5 plus 12. And then over here, all we're going to do is change the previous number. So instead of 0, we'll have a 5. Instead of 0, we'll have a 5. And this one gives us 7. So g of 5 equals 7. 5 is paired to 7. Okay. Now that we have both points, now we just need to do the rate of change. So the rate of change, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, is going to be equal to 7 minus 12, and then 5 minus 0. Okay, using the calculator, 7 minus 12 over 5 minus 0. And that gives us a negative 1. So the rate of change is negative 1, which means the function is decreasing in that interval. Right? In this case, they're giving us the function that g of x is equal to negative x squared minus 7x plus 16. And they're telling us that the interval starts at negative 5 and ends at 0, the x interval, right? So for point number 1, we know that it's negative 5, comma, we don't know the y. And for point number 2, we know it's 0, but we don't know the y. Going to find out. So wherever we see an x, we're going to plug in our x values. So the first one we're going to find is g of negative 5. Right, so where we have an x is going to be negative 5. So notice that this negative sign is going to stay there. For the x, we're going to plug in negative 5, and we're going to keep the square. Right? So literally, for the x, we put in negative 5. Okay? Minus 7, and then negative 5, and then plus 16. I need green for this one. See? All right, then you just put this in the calculator. Once again, Here we go. You can watch me so that you can see how I enter it. Negative sign, parentheses, -5, close parentheses, squared, -7, parentheses, -5, close parentheses, and then plus 16. And the answer is 26. So this tells us that when the input is -5, the output is 26. And we're going to do the same thing for g of 0. Okay, so -0 squared minus 7 times 0 plus 16. And if you already notice, anything 0 squared is going to be 0. 7 times 0 is going to be 0, so the answer is just going to be 16. And you can check in the calculator if you want to as well. Okay, so I wrote down the rate of change formula, and we need to do y2 minus y1. And so that is, whoops, wrong highlighter, 16 minus 26 over 0 minus a -5. 0 minus a -5. All right, putting this in the calculator. 16 minus 26 over 0 minus a -5. So we get a -2. This means that the rate of change is equal to -2. It's decreasing in that x interval.